everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Lauren. If you're new to me, I am healing my chronic fatigue and adrenal fatigue by healing old emotional wounds, healing wounds from my early life and attachment trauma from my childhood. By healing these wounds, I have been able to heal my adrenal fatigue, and I would say 90 to 95% of my chronic fatigue. The only time my chronic fatigue comes back at this point is when something in the astrological system brings something specific up that I haven't healed yet, and my symptoms come back. Or if I'm emotionally triggered by something that I haven't, and it triggers something that I haven't healed yet, and my symptoms come back up. Other than that, I have healed my illnesses, these fatigue illnesses, by healing emotional wounds, by healing my energetic body. That includes my thought patterns, so it starts with the wounds, which enables you to shift your beliefs, which enables you to shift your thoughts and patterns. In my experience, it doesn't work well in the other direction. When you try, so this is what cognitive behavioral therapy is about. It can be very helpful for a lot of people for specific things that they're working on, but in my experience, it doesn't go deep enough. Just by changing your thoughts, it doesn't change at the root cause of where those thoughts came from. So for me, when I started working on cognitive behavioral patterns, which was really helpful and a very important part of this process, what I found was no matter how much I practiced shifting, as long as I had the core wound, some core belief about myself, those thoughts were never, I was going to be constantly, chronically in my head, shifting for the rest of my life. And I was not interested in doing that. And I still had all of these behavioral blocks, unable to shift certain parts of my life. So going the other direction, starting with the wounds, starting with the pain, healing the wounds, then you're able to very easily shift the beliefs. Then you're very easily able to shift the thought patterns. Whenever you have thought patterns that are just chronic, and no matter what you do in your efforts to change those patterns, they just won't shift. They won't stop. These thoughts about yourself and your life and other people just won't stop. Or these beliefs, you tell yourself you believe, but you're still in conflict in that area of your life. What you say you believe is not actually coming true. It's because there is a wound that is attached to those thoughts and beliefs. It's like the wound has these strings pulling it and keeping it in place. And no matter how many times you try to move that thought or belief, as long as those wounds have strings attached to them, you're never going to be able to get rid of that. I'm talking about disempowering thoughts. I hope that was clear. Disempowering beliefs and thoughts about yourself. But once you heal the wound, the emotional wound, the energetic wound, that dissipates, the strings detach, and the thoughts, when the thoughts come up, you can use these cognitive behavioral approaches to shift the way you think, and it just disappears. These beliefs are really easy to change, to shift to something that's empowering, because you don't have this core wound that is keeping that disempowering belief and thought alive. It's like it's feeding it all the time. Even though your thoughts, you're shifting your thoughts to try to starve these patterns, the wound is always feeding it. So this is what I believe. So in my experience, healing the wound is how you heal your illness and how you heal your life. If you have a lot of blocks, if you find you have a lot of blocks in your health, which if you have chronic fatigue or adrenal fatigue, you do have blocks in your health. You have blocks in your health, you've got blocks in your career, finance, any area of your life where you have blocks, you have wounds that haven't been healed, and they are keeping you stuck in that place. They're keeping the unconscious beliefs that are disempowering you alive and that are preventing you from moving forward and shifting it. So, I mean, isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing that you might be able to heal your fatigue illness or other areas of your life too by healing emotional wounds? You don't have to have any doctors, in theory. No, what if you don't need any doctors, any supplements, any protocols, any expensive equipment? what if you could just heal it by healing your emotional wounds and your energetic distortions that are in your body? And it's our body. So, of course, we have control over this. We have the ability to do this. So I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing. I wanted to share today about the shame wound again. I'm probably going to end up making a lot of videos on shame because I have found it is a core part of at least my illness, and I'm sharing in case it's a core part of your illness, and I'm really entrenched in it right now, and it's a tough one. It's a really tough one. And again, my lip always wants to curl when I think about shame because there's an element of yuckiness, of disgust, of I don't want to look, I don't want to feel, I don't want to see. That means I still have shame in my body. When you have shame about shame, you still have shame. Right? Did that work? So I've been making a list of some of the big symptoms, the main symptoms that I have connected to this shame wound. Because in this channel, what I'm talking about is how these core wounds can manifest over time when you have all the stagnant energy. You have defenses in your body about these. So you've got core wounds, you've got core pains, you've got pains, and then from the pain stemmed an emotion. There's an emotional wound that stemmed from it. But if it happened during childhood and early life, you needed a defense, some way to protect yourself, because those feelings were too big for you. Big ones like powerlessness, helplessness, root chakra wounds of being unsafe, not feeling loved. Those are wounds that are around love and safety, not feeling loved, not feeling safe, or not feeling loved the way you needed to be loved, or not feeling safe in some emotional or physical way or psychological way. If there's any kind of abuse or anything, or even something more subtle, like just slightly absence, emotionally absent parents, you can end up with traumas and wounds that impact the rest of your life if you don't heal them. But that's what we're talking about, healing them, right? So when you have those, then you build these defenses around because you were little and you didn't have the resources to deal with those kinds of pains. And so then you have built all these defenses to block that feeling. Don't feel that feeling. I have to disconnect from that feeling a little bit so that I can deal, so I can cope, so I can go on. And so when you build up these defenses and then you live your life with these defenses running all the time, whenever you get confronted with, something that triggers that old wound, your defense comes up, it stagnates the energy, and in some cases, for highly sensitive people and empaths especially, this can very quickly and eventually manifest as a physical illness. Now, if it has certain components like powerlessness, helplessness, shame, but that correlate with fear, ultimately lead to fear, a very intense fear state, then it can manifest as chronic fatigue or adrenal fatigue. Because all that stagnated energy in your body, all that stagnant emotional energy that's trying to come up is stopped, it's stagnant, it's stagnated, and that wreaks havoc in your cells. It starts shutting down mitochondria all through your systems, and mitochondrial damage affects every system, every major system in your body, and you start getting symptoms. Over time, you start getting symptoms, one of which is fatigue. So in my body, I've worked to identify, so there are certain emotional wounds that I believe, for me, are correlated with certain symptoms that show up in the body. So I'm going to just read the list that I have for you to see if any of these things resonate, and if you think for you, if they do resonate, then do you think they could be related to shame or some other sacral chakra wound, which is all about love, relationships, especially with yourself. When we're talking about shame, we're really talking about our relationship with ourselves. So there are some symptoms on here that are correlated, that are directly part of the illness, the chronic fatigue or adrenal fatigue illness. And then there are other ones that are just sort of personality behavioral traits that definitely are symptoms of shame for me, and see if this resonates with you, okay? So one of the ones is looking away a lot when you're speaking or when you're making eye contact. When you're making eye contact with someone and you want to look away a lot, especially when you're in the spotlight and you need to look away a lot. You probably haven't noticed that I do that, and I'm working on this. But that's the thing. You can't just work on the symptom. You also have to go and heal the shame wound. That I'm talking to myself, but maybe you too. So that's one thing. Looking away a lot. That's a symptom of shame. Stuttering speech or false starts. Now this is so prevalent for me all through my schooling. So much. If ever I was on the spot, I would start to speak and then stop myself and then start and it would start. And my lips would sort of purse up and I'd get really tense. And then it would make it worse. I'd get more nervous. And then it would get worse and worse and worse because the shame would get more intense because people were looking at me, that I was being put on the spot, and the shame was just bubbling up. I was just being triggered all over the place. And then similarly, going blank. So when you're put on the spot and you're about to say something, or you're about to confront someone, or you're about to make a speech, and your mind just goes completely blank. I can't tell you how many times this has happened to me. This is a shame. This is the shame wound. That whatever circumstance makes you go blank is triggering that shame wound. Another thing is turned in posture. If you have habitual slumped shoulders, head down, looking away, turned in posture. So slumped shoulders, forward hips, and eyes down is another symptom of shame that manifests in your life you don't think about. And what I have noticed is that when my shame wound is triggered as I'm going through this healing process, it almost feels like I'm incapable of standing up and sitting up straight. It just feels like I can't do it. It's so exhausting. It just feels like this is the way my body needs to be. Slumped shoulders, hips forward. My limbs are sort of heavy and weak. There's a little bit of helplessness mixed in there. That happens when my shame wound is being evoked at a given time. One that I've noticed more recently is aversion to your own child self or your inner child. This was so true for me. When I first started doing this work, I couldn't stand the thought of working on my inner child. Ugh. I wanted to cringe. And when I at the thought, and when I would hear people talk about going into your inner child and comforting her and making her feel safe again, and reparent, this idea of reparenting, and these are all things that I believe in and I have had a lot of success with. But I will tell you, when I first started on this work, that was so aversive to me. I don't want to do that. And I wasn't ready to do that until I was ready. And when I was ready, I did it. So you might have to do a little shame healing work first if you have that feeling with your inner child. Because I started learning about inner child, and it just, and one of the techniques that people talk about is printing out a childhood picture of yourself at the age that you think you may have had wounding, or the age that resonates. Like if you think of your inner child, what age is she or he? And so it was 3 for me, and also 5. So 3 and 5. So I printed out pictures. I did the assignment. I did the activity. And I was supposed to say good morning to her and good night to her every morning and night and tell her I loved her. I will tell you, I literally could not bring myself to do it. I think I did it one time and I could barely bring myself to even look at the picture. Isn't that crazy? So, these are symptoms that you don't necessarily have to have. I'm just sharing some of the things that I've noticed are definitely involved in the shame wound for me, definitely the sacral chakra wounds. And as the more I heal of this wound, the sacral chakra wounds, and this particularly shame, and the pain that caused the shame of not getting the type of love that I needed at these certain ages, I am more and more able to do the inner child work. I still have work to do before I can feel nothing but joy and wonderful warm feelings towards pictures of my child self, which is very confusing to me because I had a great childhood. And so for me, I've never understood this until recently. It's like, well, why would I have an aversion to my child self when I have great memories from my childhood that I didn't realize I had any wounding? Because attachment trauma can be so subtle, and you don't see the effects of attachment trauma until you grow up, basically, or at least your teenage years. usually. I mean, maybe as like a psychologist could see it, but most people, when they're looking at themselves, they can't see that until they start like having relationship issues with others that might bring things to light more quickly. But when it's a relationship issue with yourself, that's very confusing. And it's a gift of this illness, in my opinion, is that it brought this to light. Because when it's just your relationship with yourself, you've only had a relationship with yourself ever. And so it's so hard to get perspective of how it's supposed to be in there. So for me, another one is an aversion to or inability to be playful or silly or take part in pretend play. This one has been a really painful one for me because I have a son, a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful boy. He's 6. And it has caused me so much pain over the years to have this emotional aversion to playing pretend. I've done it anyway. But unfortunately, every time that I do, my health suffers. Just within minutes. My symptoms get worse so quickly. When I start to I guess it's, embodying a child self. And because I have these wounds still, and they are so much better than they used to be. For a long time, I basically couldn't do it at all. I would immediately start getting sick. I would still do it. I would just engage as much as I could, but I was limp. I was exhausted. I'd start getting short of breath. The fatigue, my facial expression would just turn blank. It was like it was all shutting down. All the systems in my body would so quickly take a downturn. And it's because pretend play and joy and being just playful in general, doing silly voices and just doing silly things with your body, that has really been blocked for me for a long time. And it's really sad for me, especially having a kid who I love and want to play with. I want to play. And so that's been a really hard one for me. So I'll just, I share in part for the reasons I said, but also in part for you to know that if you're struggling with this yourself, it could just be a shame wound, and that's not your fault. And you have the power to shift it and start working on this wound through the techniques that I teach, or if you find others elsewhere, but you do have the power to heal this, and so do I, and I'm working all the time on it. But this has been one of the hardest symptoms for me to deal with, to make sense of, because I love my boy so much, and I just, I just want to play. I want to play. But it's getting better, and it can for you if this is true for you. And my playfulness is, not back. But I feel the inching toward it. I feel like it is in there, because for a long time I thought it's just gone. It's just gone. But it's in there, and I can feel it getting closer. I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to do a scene change. I know I did this on another video because I need to go pick up my son. I'm going to wait in line at the carpool. So I will be back in a moment. Hi again. Sorry for the interrupt. But, the next one I was going to say, the next sign of the shame wound that I have thought about is similar to the last one. And that is a block or an aversion to creativity, and sort of believing that you do not have the ability to be creative, and that you're just not a cool person. Maybe you develop that belief in childhood, or it's just really blocked. You just feel like you can't do it. And that has always been true for me until I started healing this shame wound and healing this illness and all the wounds that have caused it. And so those are more like personality, behavioral traits maybe, and some physical symptoms that I have related to the shame wound. So things like, that are about the sacral chakra. So water retention, lymph stagnation, congested lymph, a distended lower abdomen, which is part of those things. It happens when you have congested lymph in the lymph vessels around your liver. Those are definitely related to the sacral chakra, because the sacral chakra is the energy system that controls all the fluids in your body. An emotional symptom that's related to this wound is rage. Rage and powerlessness, which often go hand in hand. They always go along with shame. So when you have core shame, what I'm talking about here is core shame. There's healthy shame, but what I'm talking about here is core shame, and that's toxic shame that becomes a part of your energy system, a part of your nervous system. And when you have core shame, it's very common to also have a symptom of rage. When you have a core shame wound, there's this element of powerlessness. When you were a child, you were powerless to change the circumstances to get out of that shame, that feeling of shame, that experience of shame. And so powerlessness is innately embedded in with that core wound of shame, because when you experience shame, you also experienced powerlessness. And powerlessness really blocks that solar plexus energy, and that is it's a horrible feeling for a human being to feel really powerless in their own life. It's a horrible emotion for any living being to feel completely powerless. And so in sort of reaction to that, there's sort of an outburst, but it's a toxic, it's an unhealthy direction of this energy, of all this energy that's blocked in the solar plexus, which gets like shot out of your body as rage. It's just like, because rage allows you to feel more powerful in your life and in your body, and when you are enraged, you feel powerful. And this is why people with anger issues, why anger can become addictive for some people, because it makes you feel powerful. When you're feeling powerless, you can turn that energy, shoot it out as rage, and you no longer feel powerless. You do deep down, but it covers up, it conceals. It's like this Band-Aid, but you're harming people around you or yourself. If you direct that energy at yourself, then you're harming yourself. And so often when we have a shame wound, especially highly sensitive people, I think a lot of people do direct it towards themselves. But eventually, over time, if it's habitual enough, eventually it's almost inevitable that it starts shooting out at other people, because that energy is just blocked for so many years, and it's only a matter of time when that rage is going to start coming out towards other people. And I don't mean like, violent outbursts or anything. I just mean having but angry outbursts, just rage. You grit your teeth, you might hit something off a table, you've got all of this energy that's built up in you, and you want to release it. But it can also come out as just general chronic inner irritability. It can also come out as judgment of the self, judgment of others, and then the underneath the rage, which is the reaction. The rage is a reaction to the powerlessness. A symptom of the powerlessness in particular, for me, manifests one way as a very limp, weak feeling in my body. And fatigue. Fatigue is one way that it manifests. If that powerlessness wound gets activated for me, fatigue is one of the primary symptoms in my body. Other than the water retention and the slow lymph, the distended lower belly, I would say also a slowing of my digestion. Suddenly I can't eat the same things. I can't eat the same things that I could. I could have eaten one way yesterday, and I try eating the same way and it doesn't go well. It's because that solar plexus energy, where your digestion starts, is weakened. When a powerlessness wound is activated or triggered, then the systems, the organs that are in that place are going to weaken. So your liver, your stomach are two big ones. But also your adrenals. So, you know, having adrenal symptoms could be another symptom, or kidney symptoms. So another one that I've talked about some on this channel, which is a pattern, is self-loathing and self-doubt, which can show up as self-doubt. You don't have to be conscious of the fact that there's a part of you that you hate. And when I say self-loathing, I don't mean you just can't stand every part of yourself. No. But there are parts of you. There are parts of you inside yourself that you can't stand, that you turn away from, that you reject, that are unacceptable to you, and you don't want to see it. You don't want to see it, you don't want to feel it. We all do this. Don't get me wrong, because we all do this. And it's part of the healing process of accepting those parts of ourselves that we hate and integrating them with love as a part of you, because every part of you is beautiful. But when you have the shame wound, that is, people could say that to you all day long. You can say that to yourself all day long. It's not going to make it true for you. You have to heal the shame wound first. You know, I used to hear stuff like that, and you know, in my head I'd be like, yeah, next, because I just couldn't hear it. And I was just like, yeah, whatever. How do you do that? How do you even do that? Sure, I love myself. Sure, I do. But I didn't know what it actually meant, and I didn't know what it actually felt like, because I had all these wounds that I hadn't healed. So sorry about this light. This crazy light. The sun is right in my face. It's making a light and shadow in this video. So another one is addictions. If you have any kind of addiction to food, to shopping, to drama, to any kind of substance or activity, if it is a legitimate addiction, a true addiction, that is a symptom of self-loathing, which is a symptom of the shame wound, sacral chakra wound. Part of the self-loathing, you know, what comes with that is negative self-talk. So any kind of negative self-talk that you have dealt with in the past or are dealing with now, it stemmed from that self-loathing, that shame wound, that same shame wound. And so there might be some sacral chakra wounds that need to be healed in your body. But every time I say that, I have to think, and I always want to say, when you have sacral chakra wounds, it's a wonderful thing, because it means you could feel better than the way you feel right now. Because even if you're not aware that you have sacral chakra wounds, but you have some of these symptoms, and so that leads you to the conclusion that maybe you do, but you're confused by it, or you feel demoralized by it, like, oh no, I've got this problem. Oh no, oh God, another problem to fix. This is a different kind of, it's not like when you're looking at health related on the internet for solutions. So what's causing this? What's causing that? You're looking for answers, and you're sort of compiling, because when you have chronic fatigue or adrenal fatigue, it often takes a long time there are so many systems that are involved that it can be a long process of finding this wrong with you, and this wrong, well, maybe this is caused by this, and this is wrong with me, and now this is wrong with me, and then this is wrong with me, and then this is wrong with me. And I think it simplifies it so much to realize, what if these are all just like one big emotional wound in this one spot that are causing all these problems? But I have the power to change that. There's a feeling of helplessness in my experience when you're out there looking for answers on Google, and you're being told all these things are wrong with you, but it's not clear how to fix them. And you try to take supplements, you try to do protocols and fix them, or you go to functional medicine doctors or conventional doctors, and there's all this trial and error. And when you have illnesses like these that are sort of mystery illnesses that doctors don't really know what to do with, and they're difficult to diagnose, difficult to treat, I believe that's because they are actually at their root energetically caused. That's why they're so confusing. That's why they're so difficult, because modern medicine is amazing. It can figure out a lot of stuff. And so when there's a mystery illness, it's like, maybe we're a little off the mark here. Maybe it's not the biological things that we always say are the causes of physical illnesses. Anyway, that was a little tangent. So my point is that when by listing these signs and realizing that you have a bunch of these or a few of these, and if you realize, well, maybe I really do have a shame wound, please don't get discouraged by that because of what I'm saying, because it means you have a place to go. You have power to heal this. And it means, as I said a minute ago, is that it almost guarantees that when you start healing these wounds, you will feel better. Your health will improve. You will feel better emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, all the lees. By healing these wounds, and even these little chunks of every wound will help. You will feel better with every single little chunk, little piece. And that's so exciting to me. I hope it's exciting to you. The last two are interesting ones to me. They're speculative, but I'm pretty sure, I feel very confident about them. So the first one is Candida infections. I really believe, and I have one, I really believe that Candida infections are sacral chakra wounds. They start in your body because, or they are able to become an infection, become an overgrowth in your body because there is sacral chakra weakness there, or in distortions. And when that happens over time, and the sacral chakra gets weaker and weaker over time, then when you eat sugar and when you eat the way that most of us eat flours and sugars until we get sick, then you have a weak chakra there, and so it's very easy to develop a Candida infection because that imbalance, it just takes a little bit to make an imbalance. And I think that, to my mind, that explains why so many people can eat a certain way and just be fine, and you and me can't, and we have digestive problems, and we have a Candida, and we have all these, we have SIBO, or whatever happens in our intestines, our chakras have weakened. And so I personally believe that this might be a cause of people who heal Candida infections and then they come back. It's because they haven't healed these sacral chakra wounds. But I just wonder, I have this theory that if you heal the sacral chakra wounds first, and then you go and do a protocol where you get rid of the Candida, but because your sacral chakra is so strong now, it's not going to come back. It's a theory. I also wonder, though, if you have to do some kind of protocol at all. Like if you make a really strong sacral chakra and heal all your wounds, will the Candida infection just balance, your microbiome will just balance out again? I mean, makes sense to me. And the last one are skin problems. So if you have acne, like I do, I have concealer on right now so you can't see it, but that's directly related to Candida. And skin problems energetically are about sort of an element of yourself that you don't accept, self-loathing aspects, self-criticism. And so I believe that when you are able to heal these wounds, that I'm theorizing that my skin problems will vanish when these are healed enough. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that list was helpful, and remember to take it positively, to take this as a positive thing. That this is a positive this thing, because it's putting power back in your hands. Okay, so I hope this was helpful. I hope you all have a beautiful day, and I will see you on the next video. Okay, take care.